Have you been to Express lately? People can't get enough of their clothes. They're like instant confidence boosters. The jeans come in a temp control fabric that keeps you comfortable no matter the weather. And the t-shirts, hands down, they'll feel like they're made of the softest fabric you've ever worn. And get this, the suits have stretch and look sharp. Like, what? How do they do that? Everyone's raving about the newest looks from Express. Just check out the 5-star reviews. See for yourself and shop the latest at express.com and in stores.
Hey, Spotify listener. Your DNA may be the key to a better future. Well, your ability to analyze DNA for healthcare anyway. It's called genomics, and this industry is projected to exceed $35 billion by 2024. At U Sciences Online, we partnered with Geisinger Commonwealth School of Medicine to develop a graduate program in genome-based research to help you unlock the door to a better career. Learn more about our Master of Science in Genomics at online.usciences.edu.
Incoming pitch. Spin rate of 2,500 RPM, 95.6 miles per hour.
Adjusting swing, 12 degrees. Proceed with launch angle.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the August 9th edition of the Launch Angle Podcast. I am your host, Van Lee, and this week I am joined by Jeff Zimmerman and not Rob Silver, but with a special guest, a different Rob DiPietro of the Pull Hitter Podcast. Rob joins us here shortly to talk a little bit of baseball. Stick around for that. Rob's a great guy, a lot of fun. Happy to have him on the show. And on today's show, we're going to discuss some news and notes, including Chris Sale. He's supposed to start soon. Ooh, exciting. Maybe a real impact pitcher coming up here soon. I'll ask Rob and Jeff about him and whether or not they think he can really impact leagues or not. Cole Hamels, of course, signed a deal with the Dodgers. We're going to talk overall trade deadline stuff since we missed last week. And because of the trade deadline, there were an awful lot of playing time opportunities that cropped up, and we're going to discuss fab bids from the past week that were kind of interesting. There were some former top prospects, there were current top prospects, all kinds of stuff going on here. Players finding new homes, and definitely some interesting discussions to be had. So stay tuned for that. I don't have a whole lot else to say here. Oh, last thing I wanted to mention is that we discussed tag team leagues. Both Rob and Jeff are in a tag team league together, not on the same team. They have different partners. Rob is with Ginny Butler, I believe, and Jeff is with Fred Zinke. But they discussed that league, how their teams are doing, how they settle disputes, and basically just how to run a tag team league or a co-ownership type of thing. And I think it's an interesting conversation and definitely something that I'm interested in keeping an eye on. Maybe I'd play a league like that. It'd be a lot of fun. So that's it. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk some baseball with Rob and Jeff.
Here's the pitch.
Welcome back to the show. I'm, of course, Van Lee, and I'm joined by Jeff Zimmerman. Jeff, welcome to the show. How are you this week?
Oh, I hope better than my fantasy team last week. It was a freaking mash unit. Every team was just like, by the end of the week, if I had half my players not with the red suitcase next to them, I was happy.
It gets pretty gross usually at this time of year, but this year it has been disgusting. Well, we're joined this week by Rob, not Rob Silver, though. Rob DiPietro. Welcome to the show, Rob DiPietro, at Deadpool Hitter on Twitter, of course, of the Deadpool Hitter podcast. Welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well, Van. Thanks for having me. I know there had to be, you guys had to meet a Rob quota this week, I guess. No, I appreciate you guys asking me on. This is easily one of my favorite podcasts to listen to out there. When I was thinking about making a podcast, I definitely took a lot of notes from this one to, make sure I implemented a lot of the things that you guys do and a lot of the things that you guys didn't do either. So, but I appreciate you guys having me on. I love it. Thank you for
Great. Thank you so much for joining us, too. Short notice. Rob Silver has some work stuff, so he's not here this week. But like you said, we met our Rob quota, so I think we're cleared to go, essentially. Now, you've been playing fantasy baseball for a long time, to my knowledge. How long have you been playing the actual game?
Interesting. I started, really young. I have 3 older brothers, and we started playing Stratomatic at a really early age. And we started playing probably in like 1994, just between us, like loosely, and a couple of friends. Actually, we drafted. I remember the strike shortened season we drafted after the season ended. It was funny. We just drafted like player stats, It was, but that was my first early remembrance of it. And then in 2000, I officially started a Keeper League, head-to-head category league that's still going on to this day. Got, I think, 8 of the original 12 members in it. And then the NFBC I started playing last year. It was my first season. Actually, I did 2019. I did a second chance league, and then last year obviously was a shortened league, but I tried my hand in a couple of different formats, and this year was my first full season in it. So I'm loving it. I'm getting smarter by being around such great players. So that's my fantasy experience to this day.
Absolutely awesome stuff. Let me ask this. You kind of brought up a question for me. There's a bit of a I don't know the word I'm trying to look for here. There's a concept within the fantasy industry that head-to-head is the worst. It's just head-to-head. Everyone hates head-to-head. I love head-to-head because it allows you to talk bullshit to your opponents. How do you feel about head-to-head versus roto versus different formats? Do you have a particular one you prefer the most? Do you like to play all? What do you think?
So my first roto experience was 6 years ago. And since I started playing it, so my first year I got into a league. I took over a team that was departing, and it was like a 4-keeper league, but it's weird since they started playing in the early 80s. There's no AL West and no NL West because they couldn't get the scores. But even though it's 2010 and 2015 or whatever it was, and it's like, hey, you can get the scores on the internet, but they still didn't play that. But I took over a team, and they have a second half award, and I won that by getting the most points in the second half. So I went from like 10th to 6th, but it was it was such a great feeling. It was such a great feeling to like really attack categories and move up. And I said, wow, this is fascinating. And actually ever since that moment, it became my preferred, way of playing. I still like the head-to-head aspect, Obviously, it's. I think the downside of it is obviously having a great team, and just that that last week, if they don't show up, you lose. So I've been trying to develop in my head some kind of way, like almost like the NFBC cut line, where they establish like a previous, portion of of what you're doing, and then you could take that into your next week game or something, so where you don't have to I don't know, it's just I hate that part of it of maybe just having a bad week and losing such a great season. But that is sports as well. So but roto right now has moved up my list to number 1.
All that's totally true. And the real answer to this question is play whatever you like, play multiple leagues, do whatever you want, whatever it gives you the most joy.
Try everything.
Have fun with it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, we have a lot of baseball stuff to cover, so let's get right into it. Right out of the gate, Chris Sale is expected to return to the Boston Red Sox. He has been out, of course, all season and most of last year because of the Tommy John surgery. So, Jeff, we'll start with you. Is there enough time left for Sale to ramp it up and make an impact this year, or has it taken so long that you're just going to stay away because you don't think there'll be enough impact innings from Chris Sale?
Oh, I think the impact innings are going to be there. They're bringing him in. I think they could have thrown him in the majors a bit because he was going like over 80 pitches in his last couple of starts done in the minors. So I think he's going to come in and at least be able to get you the win, and the Red Sox are able to put up some points. And I'm interested to see how he performs. I think he could really kind of help some teams. With the Red Sox rotation, I'm not 100% sure what they're doing, or I'm not sure they know what they're doing. I mean,
Martin Perez was sent to the bullpen. Supposedly Tanner Hoke is going to be called up to start. So they're shuffling some pieces for sure.
Yeah, and there's no way that I think of the guy there's another guy that should just be released too. So it's one of those situations where I'll kind of see how it plays out, but I'm really interested. Garrett Richards is the one that he shouldn't be throwing
bad.
Anymore. Yeah. But he's still in the rotation. So I think they need to get him up to speed to get to the playoffs and for the playoffs, I think is what their plan is. I kind of think Houck is like, everyone's like, oh, they're kind of messing with him. I think their plan is like, we need him for the playoffs, and they're just going to make sure he's got enough bullets left that he can be able to go the whole playoff series if they need him.
And you can go ahead, Rob.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Chris Sale, I think he hit 96 in his last rehab start. I kind of agree with what Jeff said. I think they should have just rolled him out 2 or 3 innings at a time in the majors. But I mean, if you look at his steamer rest of the season, he's right up there, like 60 Ks, and that would be top 25 for starting pitchers for the rest of the season. Like Jeff noted, great offense behind him. I think he's going to get back up to 5-6 innings right off the bat. And I think if he's available in your league and you need pitching, this is a get him at any cost type of moment. Obviously, I don't know if we're going to see the days of a 2.70 ERA and 35% K rate, but he's Chris Sale, and I don't doubt the competitiveness in him will come out and give it the best.
It's interesting to see because earlier on in the season, we discussed hurt pitchers a couple of times, and those included Noah Syndergaard, Chris Sale, Severino with the Yankees. And it's interesting to see now that we've gotten further down the road who has, quote unquote, succeeded, who has failed, and what the right answer was for that. And we said a long time ago that Chris Sale is definitely one of the top guys to watch, despite maybe the outlook being a little better on some of the other guys earlier on in the season. So here we are. We're going to really see what he can do, and I think he could definitely impact the league if he's still out there and available. Still sticking with the pitching side of things, Cole Hamels has now signed a contract with the Dodgers. Hamels, of course, has had a long career. Pitched, just 3 1/3 innings last year, 141 2/3 innings in 2019. So he hasn't quite thrown too many innings since 2019. But what do you think about him signing this year, Rob? Do you think he could impact fantasy teams, or is this a situation you'd stay away from?
This is a stay away for me, at least. I don't like the fact that, I just don't like the guys revving up, right before the season, his season starts and getting in there. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, a part of his contract is he's going to get paid per start he makes. So I know the Dodgers probably don't have problem paying him, but I just think this is a plug-in for the Dodgers whenever they see fit for a lefty arm. But I'm staying away. I'm staying far away from this one.
Yeah, I kind of dug around and found Buster Onlika had some velocity readings, and he was 88 to 90 miles an hour, and he's never really been successful around that range. So it's just one. I'll really have to see what happens. I think there's some other guys I probably would want to take a better chance on, but it's with the Dodgers, and I know as soon as he's available, everyone's going to add him no matter what his results are. But it's like I said, I would have to see 2 or 3 starts before I'm interested in rostering him.
Definitely understand that one. All right. Well, we missed last week's show due to some scheduling stuff, so we didn't really get to talk about the trade deadline. We're not going to go through the trades like we'd planned. I just wanted to ask, was this the most exciting deadline you can remember? Particularly, this is for Jeff, but Rob, tell us about it too. I'm sure you've done some shows since then about it, but what do you think about this trade deadline? It was anarchy, right? Was it enjoyable? How did you feel about the whole process?
Oh, it was nuts. And me and poor Spore were the only two kind of like full-time covering it on the fantasy side for Rotographs. And it was just it was like one trade happened and another one. And it's like the main side had all these people and we were trying to combine them. And oh my God, at some point we just decided we're going to give up on relievers and try to get as many of the hitters or starters covered and just let the bullpen report cover the relievers. But no, there's just a lot going on. And on the fantasy aspect, some of the big names didn't really, some closers lost their jobs. So they lost their fantasy value, but it's not so much the big names as kind of the holes that were opened up in some of the teams like Pittsburgh and Miami, the Nationals, where it's kind of like, well, let's figure out what some of these new guys are and see who they brought up and see if any of them are worth rostering this season or if they're worth taking on a chance for next season.
Yeah, I loved it. I think that week preparing for Fab was the most crazy, week, and just trying to instantly break down each trade and see what who can grab some playing time, who's going to lose playing time. And for like dynasty aspect too, it's really fascinating to see a lot of the, well-known prospects getting traded for well-known MLBers. I know everyone became a prospect analyst on Twitter that day, but it was just cool to see, a lot of the better younger players in the minors changing teams. And I don't know, like it seemed to me like a lot of those prospects don't normally get moved. And I don't know if this is something like that we're being prepped for the CBA. I don't know if the teams know something that might change the pay structure of a lot of these prospects, and maybe they're not going to be as valuable to the team, being like they're going to be maybe more expensive down the line. I don't know, but it was good to see the movement, and the Cubs traded everybody, and I think that's where a lot of the playing time impact that I was looking at least came from. Just trying to see if Ian Happ maybe could turn his season around with some everyday PT now.
And so that way he won't just hit 180 the rest of the way. Holy cow. You brought up something interesting about the CBA, and I do think there could be a little something to that. That's kind of borderline conspiracy theorist at this point because we just don't know any information, so I don't want to say a whole lot about it. But I think there's something a little to that because we've seen the valuation of prospects not only change across the board, but from organization to organization. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking the Cubs got kind of a weak deal for this player, but then they got the Blue Jays gave up a lot to get Jose Barrios. So it just depends on how you value the prospects, how teams value them. And I think that's fascinating to watch. With all of these changes, is there anything, Rob, that kind of stands out to you? Are there any particular players that have now gotten a playing time chance, like you say with Ian Happ, that kind of stand out to you as someone that, I'm really going to watch this guy?
I think staying with the same team, I've been pretty fascinated with Rafael Ortega, just getting a chance to lead off, play every day, getting a chance to run, even though he's getting caught stealing a lot. He's 5 for 10, I believe. And just to see what may become of their bullpen now, if Rowan Wick comes back from the minors or they give Manny Rodriguez a shot to, go forth. He's definitely a young dude who throws some gas, but I think the Cubs, like where most of my attention has been drawn to see if a guy like Frank Schwindel can be anything for the rest of the season in a deep league. But that's where I see most of the playing time, at least, and Washington as well too. I think Jeff wrote up a good little tidbit on Luis Garcia in one of his articles, and I think he's a player that with everyday PT can definitely be worthy of a roster ad in most leagues.
Well, that just leads right into it, Jeff. What do you think? Are there any other positions that you watched? And tell us about that Garcia article.
Yeah, I've written up Garcia a couple places just because he's been on the move. But the one with Garcia, he's just kind of got a nice, like, all-around profile, which I find is actually, like, undervalued. Like, everyone, like, I need a power, and they're going to go out there and just add Patrick Wisdom because that's who they are. And then but with, like, Garcia, he's got some power, he's got some speed, his batting average is, like, okay right now. So, no, I think he's interesting. And like I said, he's still young. He's getting back, just 21 years old, ready to get in the league. But, I mean, he's got a 200 BABIP right now. I mean, it's got to be able to get that up a little bit. But if his low strikeout rate, he's got under 20% strikeout rate at this age, got some power. So, no, I think he's interesting. And like I said, we'll get a decent amount of time to hopefully watch him. Another guy I kind of been watching is Hoy Park that's got moved to the Pirates and has been leading off. I kind of knew nothing about him coming into the season, and I have a little, like, player finder that for guys doing really good in AAA, like the Voight Muncy All-Stars is what I call them. It's like these guys that came out of nowhere, and he kind of had that ability where he just had a good plate discipline, and for the first time he was hitting for some power. He had 10 home runs down in AAA. So with that little bit of power, I think will be interesting here kind of going forward to see if he can get if he can get to that power again in the majors, that's going to kind of be the biggest thing. Right now, the pitchers are just attacking him with like 60% fastballs to see if he can do any damage. And he's just kind of been double power right now. He's got 4 doubles right now. So, I mean, that's good enough to keep playing maybe in like a David DeJesus type of way. But, I mean, it'd still be a valuable player, but I don't know if he's a 0 in power in fantasy yet. It's going to be kind of a tough guy to roster.
Very
David
true.
DeJesus. Wow.
I know. I thought the same thing when he said that.
Man. Come for the podcast and get a David DeJesus mention there.
Oh my God. He was like one of the best players there was that was absolutely no fantasy value. Like he didn't steal a base. One year he was like leading the team in RBIs from the leadoff spot and had a bunch of runs, and he never hit any power either. Like I don't even ever got to 20 home runs in a season, but it was like all on base, doubles. And it was just like the worst fantasy player ever, but like borderline all-star at stuff that doesn't count that way.
The major league level, of course. All right, let's get into the fab analysis from this past weekend. We have some ads and drops that were kind of interesting. So we'll take a look at these players and determine whether or not they were good ads or drops. And we'll start with one of those playing time contribution issues here. We have Carter Kieboom with the Nationals. He's basically getting a good amount of playing time. He was a former top prospect that just never has quite gotten it going in the major leagues. So, Rob, we'll start with you. Is it time for Kieboom to succeed? Is he someone you would roster, or is this just kind of a long shot for him to actually provide fantasy value?
I stayed away from him this week. I don't know. I tried to dig up as much as I could in terms of how he was in the minors, and he just hasn't really been that great for a while now. I don't know. Obviously, prospect growth isn't linear, and everyone advances at a different rate, but I still wanted to see a little more from him at the major league level first before I decided to dive in. I mean, he has the pedigree, he's shown it, but it was just a while ago for me, and I don't know. I didn't see him as like a really power grab or a speed guy, so I kind of remained neutral on him for this week. He's probably going to prove me really wrong, though, and then if I try to add him, he's going to be too expensive.
Yeah, I could have had him down on some waterfall lists a little bit as a backup option. I don't know if there's a lot there. I think we're still trying to figure out if there's anything there. I'm still love the fact that last season he had a 0.10 ISO, like almost 0 throughout the season. He just walks a ton, and he's still just like almost too patient. Like he either gets the walk or he has to kind of swing at junk right at the end to put the ball in play. We'll see what happens with him this year, but he's got like I said, he's got a little bit more power. He's hitting with so far, but I don't know. I just don't think that we'll see if he can live up to the prospect hype, but just as a player, if he came up without the prospect pedigree, there's just nothing in his profile that would have me wanting to go out and add him.
I kind of swore him off finally this season because I've always liked him a little bit, but it just doesn't seem to be there. And this happens every now and then, and there's a chance it could change. But kind of like Rob said, I need to see a little something before I'm really interested in him. And honestly, he's not really doing a little something right now. He's hitting okay, 255, 357, 404, but just 2 homers, no steals in his 56 plate appearances. So no thanks in this case, but who knows? He could change my mind by the end of the season. Sticking with some ads, we have another top prospect, Joe Adell of my Angels, getting the call and some playing time right now on the season. Just 25 plate appearances, 304, 360, 478. Jeff, we'll toss it to you on this one. What kind of impact can Adell have the rest of the way?
I think he's that one player that could just be like the huge boost for a team that needs to move up. He's got the power, he's got speed. And if he can make enough contact, which he's done so far, he's only struck out 4 times in 25 plate appearances, which is pretty amazing. And people are throwing him all kinds of junk. It's just not seeing a fastball at all, but he's still holding his own right now. Like I said, I think if he's out there, he's kind of a must add. He might be one where it's like if you've got a huge lead and you don't want to ruin your batting average, you don't add him. But with most of the like roto stats being counting, I think you might be able to handle that. And, he has speed. He had 8 steals in the minors this year to go with his 23 home runs. So I'm all in on him wherever I could add him.
Yeah, I agree, Jeff. I picked him up in TGFBI, and I was surprised because I only went like $48, and I didn't think I was gonna get him. And surprisingly, I did. So, but yeah, I think you said it right. At this point of the year, when you're looking for like a home run type pick, this could be the guy. He improved his K rate in the minors toward like the last 6 weeks. And it's a small sample so far, but the end zone contact and the overall contact has shot up. The zone contact is almost up 30%. So it looks like he's seeing more balls too. So it kind of looks like he's just developing that eye and the tool that he needs to put the bat on the ball. And when he does, you can see the max EV is there, the power is there, and if Trout comes back, it could be a lineup that could just generate a ton of runs, and he could definitely, like Jeff mentioned, those be through the roof for sure.
And the Angels are in an interesting situation. They act like they're still in it. They're at 500, I think 10 games back of Houston in that division. I don't know what it is of the wild card, but they're ostensibly going for it, but we're also getting a lot of injuries with the team. Rendon's now out for the season. Trout has, of course, continually been pushed back. So I think they are doing a thing where they're trying to put out the team that can best win them a game, but also trying to see what they have going forward. And that's exactly what Adele is. He could make them the best team, but it's also a thing of we need to see if he's ready and if he can hold the job and play well down the stretch. Okay, maybe he has a starting job next year. So definitely a situation to keep an eye on, particularly for next year as well, but definitely an impact bat for this season.
And I think it's interesting what you said, Van, about them, kind of being in still, or, I think during the right for the trade headline, I was wondering what Iglesias, if he was going to be on the go, if he was staying, and kind of have discussions in my head saying, it doesn't feasibly look like they can make the playoffs, but at the same time, like, how do you tell the fan base, we're not going to go in with Ohtani and Trout and all these possible young kids too? Like, how do you just lay down and say, we're not going to try? So I'm glad that they kept Iglesias, and I'm glad that they're giving Adele the shot. And like you said, let's see what they got.
Absolutely. And organizationally, we kind of see their MO as the couple of trades they made at the trade deadline were just to get minor league pitchers after the draft, where they took nothing but 20 first-year player pitchers, no offensive players. So, I think they're playing their hand a little bit there and trying to get some pitching in the system. Whether that works or not, we'll see. All right, on the drop side of things, we have Brad Hand at the trade deadline making his move to Toronto. So I guess the question here is Brad Hand going to get a save opportunity, Rob, or is it strictly going to be Jordan Romano or Adam Simber? What's the closer outlook on this team?
Yeah, I thought that Hand would get some shots at closing out games for Toronto, and I feel like some fantasy owners were definitely quick to drop him. The first weekend, I thought it was maybe just at least smart to give it a week or two and to see if they would add him into those leverage situations. But I don't know. And then Soria too added to that bullpen, and I thought, wow, they can just really go to whoever they want. And I think we kind of saw that with early in the season where Montoya was just like, whoever's ready to close out the game, whether it was Julian Merriweather or Dolis or Romano. So I think that Hand should still get some chances to close, and I think you can expect him to get some here and there, but it's hard to plug him into your lineup. I think a weekly roto league where you're just hoping for the maybe save, I think one thing that, I've learned from listening to Jeff, he's always mentioning, look for the usage on the weekend. So maybe that closer can get a good, if he's lined up to get a possible save on the Monday or something like that. And maybe you could use Brad Hand in that type of way, but it's tough. I think it's all hands on deck there to win games. So I don't know if we're going to see one guy get all the chances.
Yeah, I actually dropped Hand. It was in a 12-team league, and it was just like, I don't know what's going on. And I put in some bids. I think I just kind of replaced him. It was like all these guys were better than him. And I was like, there's a lot of just relievers that were putting up better rates than Hand. So I just went a different approach right now. I could see in deeper leagues where it's like, well, I've got to take every chance to try to get a closer, and there's just nothing available. You just kept him. But in that 12-teamer, I moved on. I don't think he's anything special, like his stats aren't, at Devin Williams type levels. So I think it was fine to drop, but it could be something that comes back and haunts us, because it's like, of course, I mean, it's the Toronto bullpen where we've wasted so much money between them and the Reds. I don't even want to know how much fab has been spent on those two bullpens.
But the thing working against him is something that's always worked against him in his career, is that he's left-handed. So often managers like to deploy the left-handers in big situations where left-handed hitters are coming up. That's the seventh inning. Maybe Hand gets the seventh inning. Whatever it may be, that gives him a little bit more freedom. So I also think that goes a little bit against him, but still a reasonable pitcher. And like you said, Jeff, if it's a deeper league, it might be worth hanging on to him. Okay, let's take a quick break here, and when we get back, we'll discuss more ad drops as well as tag team leagues.
Have you been to Express lately? People can't get enough of their clothes. They're like instant confidence boosters. The jeans come in a temp control fabric that keeps you comfortable no matter the weather. And the t-shirts, hands down, they'll feel like they're made of the softest fabric you've ever worn. And get this, the suits have stretch and look sharp. Like, what? How do they do that? Everyone's raving about the newest looks from Express. Just check out the 5-star reviews. See for yourself and shop the latest at express.com and in stores.
Back on the ad sides of things, we have Jorge Mateo, who was DFA'd by the Padres and picked up by the Baltimore Orioles, and has played a little bit there with the Orioles. 105 plate appearances total this season, 2 homers, 7 steals, and a 214, 260, 347 slash line. Jeff, let's go to you on this one first. What do you think of Mateo? Is he going to provide enough value to give fantasy relevance? I mean, we know he has speed, but can he get on base and take advantage of that speed?
I think... No, I want nothing to do with him. I mean, the Padres couldn't find someone to take him via a trade. Like, they're just like, hey, whoever wants him can take him. And, the deal with Baltimore is he probably wouldn't even been playing if Ramon Urias hadn't been hurt. So he got 2 starts over the weekend, and I think a lot of people saw those starts that like, oh, he's, in the lineup there and starting and has a chance to get steals, but he really doesn't. Like, Urias is just, I don't know about twice the hitter, but he's quite a bit better of a hitter, overall talent, and could be someone that Baltimore possibly uses into the future. I mean, another St. Louis player that they just kind of gave up on and moved on from. But no, I think it's Urias' job once he gets healthy, and Mateo will go back. I mean, most of Mateo, if you go through his logs, all of his steals were from pinch running or pinch hitting, and then when he was with the Padres. So I think he's just kind of he'll just be like a 4th outfielder, probably like a poor man's Sherrod Dyson.
Yeah, I totally agree with that assessment, Jeff. I don't think he has enough major league hit tool to last and become an everyday player. Like you said, Ramon Urias has been great in the last couple months at the pickup, right up the middle. He's been, you've been filling the stat sheet, and you just see him. He just looks like a major league hitter. And Mateo, yeah, he doesn't walk. He doesn't have a good contact rate. And like Jeff mentioned, he comes in, he pinches, he pinch runs, and that's how he gets his steals. So yeah, he's a stay away from me.
Hard to predict those pinch run stolen bases for sure. Let's stick on the ad side of things here and go with Lewis Brinson with the Marlins. He's put together a little bit of a streak here, and overall in the season, 125 plate appearances, 4 homers, 0 steals, 261, 296, 445. Brinson was the poster child for elite player with tons of tools who just never could quite put it together. So, Rob, what do you think? Is he putting it together now? Do we think there's some fantasy value here? Because he has been atrocious in his career and hard to roster. Is he okay to roster now?
I think he might be okay to roster. Yes, I do. I watched him firsthand, watching my team, the Mets, play them in the last series before the Phillies. And he, they kept mentioning about his want to drive the ball the other way, and that the team was trying to have him focus on going the other way and untap some power that way. And while his overall pull opposite percentages haven't greatly moved to that, what they're trying to do with him, watching him poke the ball into the right in the field gap definitely was impressive. It looks like it's a natural power alley for him. So I feel like if he can keep that up, take a shot. I think maybe not, that power output like that Joe Adele can give you, but if he can get on base and provide some homers, he'll steal some bags. And at this point, I think the Marlins just got to give him some run and really let him play out the rest of the season. So I'm willing to take a shot, and if it doesn't work, just put him right back into the player pool.
Yeah, he's made some like small improvements. It's, as Rob said, he's going a little bit more the opposite way. He's making a lot more solid contact. It's not so much soft. And he's also lofting the ball a lot. When he first came in the league, he had a 57% ground ball rate, and each year he's brought it down, and this year it's at 43. So he's getting some line drives. He's getting some fly balls. I think that's all great. I do think he might have a little bit of like Javi Baez in him, where he just doesn't walk and a little too much strikeout, but he's got that power that he can kind of go on a heater. So I think he's one that the batting average, it has been a problem before. This year it's like acceptable, but I think that's what you would just kind of have to accept, that you could get anywhere from like a 200 batting average to maybe 275 if you're lucky, but probably in the low twos.
Now, the prospect that I've always compared Lewis Brinson to is Carlos Gomez from years ago, because Gomez was, again, super toolsy, loud tools. He could run. He had power. But the first 5 years of his career, he was atrocious. He was, well, maybe not as bad as Brinson, but he was bad. Couldn't hit for average. Couldn't get the OBP over 300. Never really tapped into the power of the speed. And then eventually, and I think it was his age 26 or 27 season, and this is Brinson's 27 season, he started to put it together, and he had that big season where he had, I think, 2020 or 2040, something like that. Either way, it's kind of a similar skill set, a guy with a lot of raw tools that has to build into it. And you said it earlier on the show, Rob, prospect growth isn't linear. Sometimes these guys don't hit right out of the gate. So I think there's still chance that Lewis Brinson can tap into that insane potential. Whether or not I would buy into that and spend any money on him, I don't know. But Carlos Gomez did it. A lot of these toolsy players like that did it. So it's still worth keeping an eye on him, I think, anyway.
Yeah, and I think one more thing, Van, if you don't mind, what Jeff mentioned about the loft, he's definitely putting the ball in the air more, even if it's a lot more pop-ups too. But I watched a couple of things, and I was hearing the announcers talk about how they tried to work on him. They said, like, when he was batting, his hands were going up instead of back, and starting up and then starting your swing like that, it led him to chop the ball a ton more. So they said that they worked with him on loading back instead of up. And, they said hopefully that'll add more drive into his, his oppo power and his pro power as well. So
sometimes it's a tiny thing, and that's all it takes. Jose Bautista added the leg kick, and suddenly he was a 50 home run hitter. So little things can make a huge difference for sure. Okay, back on the drop side of things, we have Brent Rooker with the Twins, who really doesn't have a position. I guess he's an outfielder. I guess he can kind of play first base. Either way, he's really bad defensively, and the manager, I think it was Baldelli, right, came out and said, hey, we're struggling to find a position. So either way, he didn't quite get the playing time we thought. But on top of that, he's been bad. 176, 235, 374, 4 home runs, and 98 plate appearances. Jeff, let's go to you first on this one. Rooker was a bit of a trendy ad amongst the fantasy circles. Is there still some upside to be found there, or are you ready to just walk away?
I think it's time to walk away. He's 26 right now. He's got the one position. I mean, it was kind of one of those deals where Nelson Cruz went over to Tampa, and it's like, oh, this position opened up. This guy that's had some minor league power is moving in there. But even in the minors, he had around a 30% strikeout rate. So, I mean, that's just going to go up. I mean, he has been able to keep it just under 30 in the majors so far, but slow, like you said, unathletic. So it's just like he either has to hit the home run or nothing else. And right now it's been 4 home runs on the season. I mean, on a full season pace, he's only at like 24 home runs on that way. So it's like, that's really just not enough for just a one-dimensional player. So I think that they're going to give him his run this year and see that there's nothing there, and then they're going to move on, I think is what's going to happen. We'll see. Like I said, he's got a few months, but I think this is what Minnesota needs to do, and a lot of these teams need to do. Like, can this guy hit major league pitching and not? There's something I brought up with Jeff Erickson last week when I was on the RotoWire podcast was I think there's a stratification in the minor leagues. Like, these guys were either in the majors last year or at the alternate site, and then like 80% of them just were like at home doing whatever that people told them to do, which probably they didn't do much of that at all. So I think that there's some of these guys that came up, and the ones that were able to see players and, take at bats and stuff really are way ahead of other people there. So maybe a lot of his power was, just beating up on these pitchers that didn't get a throw last year and, able to get those 19 home runs. But once he gets to the majors and starts facing guys that have been playing for the full time, he's just going to really kind of struggle. I think that's one of the reasons these minor leaguers, I think like their stats just got inflated in the minors, the ones that were able to get to the alternate site last year.
Great point, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. Very great point there. Let's get a couple more of these in squeezed real quick. Actually, I'm going to push ahead because I really don't like Rooker. So I want to get these next 2 pitchers in, Rob, and I'm going to start with you on those. Reed Detmers, the Angels' first-round pick last year, has made his way to the majors and been bad in 2 starts. And Jesus Luzardo, of course, who was traded to the Miami Marlins from the Oakland Athletics, was another big-time ad. So do you have any interest in either of these pitchers? What's the outlook for them the rest of the way?
I do not like Luzardo. I haven't seen anything from him to make me go gaga over him. Seemed to be like a lot of the, at least maybe it's just the prospect group. They're still thinking that he's, this glorified prospect that is going to be a stud, pitcher. I don't see it. None of his pitches really stand out to me as being, so wonderful either. So I don't know. He hasn't shown anything to make me want to, get invested in dynasty or in redraft leagues. Reed Detmers I picked up in my main event this week, trying to make up for the loss of Jake DeGrom, and so I'm just like trying to pluck up some pitchers that just can maybe give me, some big upside that I'm not expecting him to be Jake DeGrom, but I liked what I saw from him in the last start. He had the rough 2 innings, but then he really settled in, and the curveball is just filthy. He looks composed. He just looks like a major league pitcher up there. He just seemed to brush aside the miscues and the mistakes in the first couple innings, and he returned to pretty much mow a couple of people down afterwards. The CSW was really good. The curveball was missing bats, and I don't know. I really like it. I really like how last year when he was drafted, they immediately said this is the type of guy who can get up at the majors really quick, and he's here. And yeah, I was willing to pull the trigger on him. I think I got him for $8 with an unopposed bid too. So it's just in those instances you wish you could just get him for $1, but I'm happy to get him. I'm looking for some big things from him.
Yeah, Luzardo, I went nothing with him to deal with him this year. I mean, I think everyone's kind of liked him from that couple postseason times he threw in the postseason. Like, everyone got to see him like, oh, this looks great, but there's nothing there this year. He has no control. Since he's been with Miami, he's walked as many guys as he's struck out. So they haven't improved him yet. So I don't need my ratios destroyed while he's working through it. Like in Dynasty or a keeper format, maybe you can want to keep him off the potential. But for me, there's nothing there. With Detmers, I think he was probably rushed up a little fast. Again, it was just like he dominated AA through 1 game at AAA, and then it's like, here you are in the majors. And I think he probably could have used some time against better AAA hitters. Like this year, with the COVID rules, a lot of the better hitters are in AAA. Like they have to maintain those rules there. So it seems to be actually a lot of times AA is where they keep the guys and they'll promote them up from there. But this year there's just more of that stratification of like the best hitters that aren't in the majors are in AAA. So I think he could have used a couple more starts there. Maybe that one dominant start was what all they wanted to see. But I don't know if I would start him, but like Rob said, I wouldn't mind rostering him if you have the room and just waiting to see if he kind of puts everything together at some point, and he could be useful here toward as the season ends up.
A couple of big opponents. Oakland his first start out, and Dodgers his second time out. So, maybe if he faces some of the lesser offenses, if he gets starts against Texas or something, then maybe he'll have a little bit more success. But overall, career-wise, yeah, I think he's already set up to be established as a mid-rotation starter with some good strikeout potential, and keep the ball around the plate. He won't walk too many batters. So definitely someone I'm keeping an eye on, and I agree with everything you guys said. Let's do one more drop and then move topics. Let's see, last players here. We have JT Brubaker and Colby Allard. I'm going to lump them together. Jeff, these are a couple of pitchers who have had some fortune with the home run ball early in the season. Well, lately it hasn't been quite as good. Brubaker has a 1.93 home run per nine, and Allard is now at 1.65 on the season. Either of these guys have any use going forward, or is it just strictly that they're getting crushed now and you don't want anything to do with them?
These have got to be the hardest pitchers to deal with. That it's like everything else is great. Like they're not walking anyone. They've got some decent kind of ground ball rates, but it's just like those home runs have just have their ERAs up near 5, and the FIP also, since FIP measures that. But then all their other estimators are, around 4. So it's kind of like each week, like, well, is it going to regress, or is this going to be the new norm of giving up this many? For Allard, the one thing about Allard is if you look at his game log, I think he's lost 8 straight games. It's not even like the team's lost it. Like he's gotten the L in 8 straight games. So I could kind of see where someone could see where they want to roster him, but it's just like Texas is so bad. And with Brubaker going through his starts, it's like 2/3 of the time he's like lights out, or he just gets lit up like a Christmas tree. I mean, it's like 6, 7, 8 runs he allows in those starts. So I think Brubaker is one that you could I wouldn't mind rostering him and maybe just stay away from the more talented teams. It's like the whole Central's got gutted right now, and really none of those lineups kind of scare me. So he might be one I would look to add since he was dropped, and just, try and maybe stay away from the at Cincinnati start where he had problems with the last time.
Yeah, I agree with the Brubaker thing. There's just some starts where he just looks really good. And so obviously with every pitcher these days, you just look to the spin rates and see if anything is looked a little, off. And he actually not, something that's been stable for him. And it's just like in his bad starts, he loses his fastball location. It just seems like he doesn't get that rise that he needs to, and it just settles in the middle part of the plate and he gets smoked. So I don't know. I mean, if you just go by K- walk percentage, he still looks like a guy that you want to keep around, especially in 15-team leagues. Yeah, I mean, and Allard, the guy I had a lot of hopes for. I thought he was changing it around, but like Jeff mentioned, just seeing like that's got to physically wear on you and mentally wear on you, taking so many losses in a row. And at this point of the season, it's just, I want nothing to do with Allard, but I would keep Brubaker around, I think, if in a pitching desperate environment, for sure.
Yeah, and it is certainly a pitching desperate environment out there. All right, that covers it for the ad drops. I want to touch a little bit on tag team leagues or co-owning a team with a league, because you two actually co-own a league. So tell us a little bit about that league and then how you manage dealing with decision-making. Rob, why don't you take it away first? What league is it you guys are playing in together, and how's it gone so far this year?
Yeah, so we are playing in a tag team league that Matty Davis on Twitter at Matty Wood, who works for FTN Network. He put together a tag team league, 15 teams. Everyone has to have a partner. And it's pretty cool. This was actually my first fab draft of the year. So came off of like 3 slow draft champions. drafts and into this fast, draft with Fab. And it was good. It was first time working with a partner too. I worked with my partner, Jenny Butler. She's an avid NFBC player. She's good. And it's interesting because I think coming up into the draft, we had just been talking regularly just about players. So we kind of had a feel for like how we were going to approach, I guess, the draft. And then we got on a Zoom call the night before the draft for about 2 or 3 hours. And we just went through like, the first 15, 20 rounds, like maybe guys that we wanted to try to get, strategy that we wanted to try to employ, and just have a good feel for backups at each round that we would feel comfortable taking. So we weren't like stuck, at the time. And we did Zoom during the draft as well. And I think the draft went pretty good, except for when, Jeff and Fred sniped us on our closer strategy that I didn't think, they double banged the closers, in the third and fourth round. And I thought that was an excellent move. But, yeah, I mean, it's been a learning process, just being, having to, because I think there's a lot just to communicate in your own brain to yourself when you're managing a team. But now you have to do extra of it. You have to get it out to another person, and then you got to be on the same page. And so we usually text and text up a week for some information, and then on Sunday we'll get on the phone and just crack down some possible ads and drops for our team. It's one of the tightest leagues in terms of standings that I'm involved with.
Crazy tight.
Crazy. It's like it changes too so much from week to week. And like right now, there's no team over 100 points. It's 99, 97, 96, 95, 91, 90 and a half, 87, 86 and a half. So it's just there's so many tight, close categories too. And the fabbing is just brutal. It's just some weeks where we went through like, 11 backup bids, just, boom, we didn't get anyone. We're like, holy smokes. But it's been fun. And just being, this is one of the leagues where I really take note of the ads and drops. Specifically, I think it just to see what all these, great fantasy minds are doing in their teams. But it's been fun.
Well, Jeff, I think when we had Zinke on in the preseason, you guys had just completed your draft. It may have been just before, but how's your team gone with him so far?
We have really had issues with starting pitching, and finally, with starting pitching, we didn't have any, so we've spent a ton of money trying to get it going. And then here recently, our stars, Trevor Story and Cody Bellinger.
Bellinger?
Yeah. Our top picks are just been like, oh my God, if you guys could hit at all, that would be great. But no, we've kind of fallen apart too. It was, we missed the hater news. We kind of looked at everything. It was like, oh, that team had set out their lineups and everything. And then we didn't get to pull him this last week. I mean, we dropped like 5 points in the standings, but it's, wasn't just because of him, but we just had a really rough week. I think, as Rob said, this league's been close. So like everyone's still like fighting out just tooth and nails. There just hasn't really been anyone drop out. I don't know if it's because of the different owners, but I really think it's just because it's so close and you're like, oh, if we just do this, we could win the league. And I think everyone kind of feels that way. Trying to work out kind of different strategies. It's always interesting with Fred because Tanner and I, he was the first person I've ever did a league with. We fought through the writing our book. So it was kind of like we had a lot of fights then, worked them out then. And so once we came to like running the league together, it's like, oh, we've already worked that out. This is kind of how we do it. But Fred and I are a little bit different. We usually would sometimes end up in the same spot, but sometimes not. The other thing is some weeks it has just been one owner. It's kind of been nice where it's like I go on vacation and Fred just runs the league and I can just, while I'm on vacation, worry about my other ones. It's like I just kind of trust him that he's going to get everything right, and I just don't even look at it. I might look at it at the end to see if we're adding in someone or if I have someone that I want to do it that way. But this last weekend was kind of the same way. He was at a hockey tournament with his kid and we weren't able to talk that much, but we were just kind of worked through, I was able to kind of do that. It's kind of nice with all your leagues if you can kind of find someone on those weekends to just, be able to do something, to help you out when you're not able to spend 100% effort to get your lineups right.
Well, let me ask this. You pointed out that the league has remained competitive. More teams are staying in it than a traditional league might. I wonder if that's partly because for a team to truly just abandon it, you now have to have two people who are holding each other accountable go, I'm going to go watch football or whatever it may be. So I think there's a little something to that. However, what I want to ask is, how do you settle disagreements? So, Rob, if you and Ginny have a disagreement, who wins in the argument? What path do you take to get there? And Jeff, what do you do with you and Tanner, or you and Fred? Go ahead, Rob. You can start off.
So for the draft, it was great. I told you we had a loose layout of what we wanted to do, and it came to, we had about I don't know when we took Lorenzo Cain, but it was, I wanted Victor Reyes and Jenny Cain, and it was like the whole draft went so well, right? And then boom, it came to like the first moment where I was like, no, I don't want that guy, and I was like, yeah, sure, like, you want speed? I'm a 35-year-old guy. All right, sure, we'll go for it. But I think for me, it would just be like, I have to trust my teammates' instinct as well, and I have to, and I don't know if she was like, I think she made something like, you could have the next one, you could have the next disagreement, you could have it, But I feel like we had more disagreements on Fab than in the draft, and I guess that's just differences in approach and how to attack categories or just players, but basically we just resolved them by talking it out, just really just identifying what players that really just going in depth on the playing time, on the schedule, on possibly down the road, they have that they only got 5 games and 2. I'm like, oh, okay, great. So I guess just having another head of eyes and another brain on it, you could really, in case you miss something, really tackle it. But, it's interesting because I fight with myself on making moves. So it's working with a teammate has been at times, just at times we're like, oh, okay. But most of the time it's smooth sailing.
Yeah. During the draft, since Fred and I've had some other leagues, it's probably our biggest fight is Fred is hitter leaning compared to me. Like, he would always want to take a hitter almost all the time versus a pitcher. That would almost always be the fight. It wouldn't be so much of like which player it is, but it's more like, we don't have enough hitting. And I was like, we got to get some pitching now or it's done, and kind of have that fight back and forth. The one thing is that's kind of the opposite with Tanner. Whenever I draft with him, he's always a little bit heavier on the pitching than I am. I would like to see Tanner and Fred in the league together, where it's like you have them on the two extremes. Maybe that wouldn't be the best. But they're both so nice. They'd probably just like default to each other.
Fold them to one another, yes.
But I think that's one of the differences, is that even if you're really close, there's always going to be someone that favors hitting. There's always going to be someone that's probably like spends a little bit more on Fab. Like, it's like, oh, it's fine if we don't get someone. And I think Fred's kind of that way. Like, he always wants to be second. And I was like, no, I want to win the guy, but I'll run this out of money faster that way. You just have to accept whenever you are a partner with someone in the league, you're never going to agree on everything. There's always going to be someone that's, going to take more chances, going to hope a player gets back from the IL. I'm probably more of like, if there's a guy that's like, oh, he may be back, later this week, should we start him? I'm like, no, let's just get the guy and get the points. And Fred will more likely take the chance of that he's going to be healthy and get healthy and give us some stats then. So I think that's the one thing you just have to understand, that the two owners are just, even if they're close, they're still going to be different on some of the aspects of running a team.
Now, if it were a tag team league that I was in, what it would be is whoever I was with would be the young professional wrestler who's putting in the work. I'm the old man who's past his prime, who's just there to wave at the crowd a little bit. Maybe an 80-20 timeshare. That I could handle, and that could do just fine. They make all the moves. Occasionally they go, what do you think of this? Oh, I think this. Okay, perfect. That would be great. I can handle that. Now, the other thing I want to say is, what is funny to me, and this is always the case with fantasy baseball, the argument of Victor Reyes versus Lorenzo Cain, the true answer was neither. And that's always how it's going to be. So don't get too angry with your teammate when you draft, because it won't matter 6 months from then.
Great point.
All right, that's going to do it for today's show. Once again, thanks to Rob for joining us. Rob, take a minute here to tell us a little bit about your podcast, where everyone can find you, and what you like to work on.
Yes. Thank you guys again for having me on. You can find my podcast. It's called the Pull Hitter Podcast on Twitter at @DeadPullHitter. Yeah. I started the podcast last summer, and it was just messing around, trying to see, I could talk my brains out about fantasy baseball and regular baseball. And then I just happened to stumble upon a draft champion overall victory. And then all of a sudden I was, rubbing elbows with everyone in the NFBC, talking. And so I said, you know what? I really wanted to get better in the NFBC world and just in fantasy overall. So I geared my podcast toward players that were playing in the NFBC, being successful, and just trying to pick their brain on how they draft, how they prep for a draft, how they do player evaluations, just really roster construction, game theory, reading Jeff and Tanner's book, A Process. It was just mind blowing. It was just really stuff I just really haven't, thought about or, dove so far into. So I really just wanted to make the podcast more toward that. And for if, everyone who's beginning to get their feet wet in the NFBC, just to learn kind of how successful players are playing it, and, what it takes to be, try to be, a good player. So yeah, that's what I got into during the off season. During the season, I've just been doing a fab rundown, kind of like this, where me and Todd Whitestone from apispreakercomepisode46028888, we just talk about the players that were scooped up in the main event specifically, and just try to do a couple of pods here and there with either a guest, or I got do a Friday to Sunday lineup pod note, where I just take a couple notes and throw it out there about some lefty righties and things like that. But more toward in the off season, getting ready to get that spurred again, getting into everyone's brain so I can get better myself.
There you go. Great stuff. Once again, thanks for joining us. Pull Hitter Podcast. Check it out. It's a good show. And Jeff, you mentioned earlier you did a guest spot on, Jeff Erickson's podcast at RotoWire. Jeff Erickson's a great dude, so definitely check that one out. And I think, Rob, you were on the show earlier last month. Is that right?
I was. Yeah, about a month ago. Yep.
So there you go. Lots of great stuff on that show, too. So check them all out, and also listen to the Launch Angle podcast, of course, as well. But for Jeff, Rob, and Rob, I'm Van Lee, and we'll catch you next week on the Launch Angle podcast.
Have you been to Express lately? People can't get enough of their clothes. They're like instant confidence boosters. The jeans come in a temp control fabric that keeps you comfortable no matter the weather. And the t-shirts, hands down, they'll feel like they're made of the softest fabric you've ever worn. And get this, the suits have stretch and look sharp. Like, what? How do they do that? Everyone's raving about the newest looks from Express. Just check out the 5-star reviews. See for yourself and shop the latest at express.com and in stores.
New hot and iced Sunrise Batch Coffee from Dunkin'. A bright and balanced, full-bodied blend brewed so you can get summering from sunrise to sunset. And even after that, because that's when you can show off those string lights you hung in the backyard. Or rehung. Enjoy a medium hot or iced Sunrise Batch Coffee for $2. America runs on Dunkin'. Price and participation may vary. Limited time offer. Exclusions apply.